If God is perfect, then why does X, Y, and Z happen? Why are things the way they are if God is perfect and God created everything? First things first, if you don't have me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, then go find me there. Instagram is where most everything happens. So if you're not on Instagram and you don't follow me on Instagram, then you miss most of the context, or at least the background of any video I do. Everything, all the planning takes place publicly on Instagram. So if you don't have me on Instagram, definitely go find me. My username is the same on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, Twitter, I'm starting to use a lot more daily. So if you want in on just some weird personal stuff, I'm starting to use Twitter as like a daily, just weird whatever is on my mind platform to shoot out there. So if you have Twitter, find me on Twitter. Lastly, you know when you say something so many times, it's like it doesn't sound right now. Lastly is definitely right, but I've said it so many times it does not sound right. Lastly, Patreon. If you have any desire to help support what I do financially, find me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/tattootheist. You have a bunch of different categories you can jump in to help support. It's different numbers, different everything. You can also win things through Patreon. I'm going to start doing like raffles through Patreon for people who do help by donating there. So you get entered into a raffle and you'll win all sorts of weird stuff. And to find out what the prizes are every month and stuff like that, you got to follow me on social media. Any of them will do, because I'll post to all of them. So one last thing about Patreon is most of you guys who are donating are doing it through the Skype model there. So basically I think it's at 20 bucks. If you donate $20, you get an hour Skype session with me to talk about whatever weird crap you want to talk about. I'll talk to you about anything. I'll talk to you about your cat for an hour. I won't like it, but I'll do it. So if God is perfect, why does any of the stuff that we don't like happen at all? We're going to go through some of the stuff. Like I said, most of these are going to come from Instagram because that's where all like the prep work with the videos comes from. So I'm going to read a bunch of comments from when I posted this question to Instagram, and then I'm kind of just going to respond to them. This is arguably one of the most controversial type questions within Christianity, but even more so in the secular world. People who are atheists, people who don't have faith. A lot of them don't have faith because they wonder if God is perfect and good, then why do these things happen? So we're going to go through a bunch of them and just kind of talk about them. Okay, so these are all one category. I'm going to read through them. The only thing I can't find an answer to is why are some babies born to parents who torture and beat them to death? I can't wrap my head around God having a divine plan for that to happen to an innocent baby. Moving on. Why do children die of cancer? Why is this world a mess? Why do we have pain and struggle? So basically all of these are lumped into a category that most apologists will call like the argument of pain and suffering. So here's a couple of answers to those, and these are from you guys too, and then I'll touch on it a little bit. These answer those questions basically. One user said, but the world is not his realm. Satan is the God of this world. That comes from the Bible. Another one said it is the devil. He is ruling this world, unfortunately, but God is still with us. So those types of answers to the previous questions come from 1 John 5:19, which essentially, like that first person said, it just says that this world is not God's. This world is ruled and run by Satan. And if you look around, it's pretty obvious. Otherwise, we have a malevolent, evil God. So you're going to have to figure out which one you buy more. Okay, so here's another. This is more of an answer, but just wait. He said things happen to teach us patience and to get us to do His will. So basically he's saying is bad things that happen in the world are lessons for us to teach us patience and to sort of coerce us into doing His will versus our own will. My response to these types of answers, though, would be this. Is the violent rape of an 8-year-old girl to teach us a lesson? Is it to teach us patience? Is it because that 8-year-old girl wasn't living up to God's will? I say no. You may disagree with me. A lot of Calvinists disagree with me. They still think rape is predestined by God. I'm not one of them. And a lot of them don't believe that, so just chill. Some Calvinists do believe that, though. And I can cite a source for that if you want to argue with me about it. Here's a couple more. In Genesis, God gave man the authority to rule the earth how they pleased. They violated God's simple standard, and from there, they did with the earth whatever they pleased. Here's another one. Sin perverts his perfect creation. Here's my problem with this, man. By saying that, here's what you're saying. You're saying God full well knew when he created those two perfect beings, right? He made Adam and Eve. If you take that story literally, he created these perfect people, unblemished, perfect. But because he's God, he's all-knowing, he has a plan. He knew full well that his two perfect beings would get in touch with Satan, right? Stay with me. He knew it because he decreed it. He made them perfect, knowing that they would get in touch with Satan, that they would choose Satan over God, thus spitting in God's face. By doing this, they're simultaneously ruining creation, right? They're tainting creation. It's what we call original sin. So God knew that they were going to do that, created them anyways, knowing they were going to do it. So then they went and did it. Okay, are you still with me? God decreed that his perfect creation would turn away from him, spit in his face, ruin everybody else in the world's chance of being perfect by putting in place original sin. I have a hard time with that. And I'll tell you why. It means God is either dumb or he's evil. He's a jerk. Because if he knew full well they were going to spit in his face, because it was part of his plan. If everything's a part of his plan, then that was a part of his plan too. So he's either a jerk or he's dumb and didn't realize what he was doing. I have a hard time buying either of those. That's not the God that I believe in. So I struggle with those types of answers to this type of question. Somebody else said this. They said perfect according to who? Because the question is, if God is perfect, why does X, Y, and Z happen? Perfect according to who? To which I would say 99.99999% of Christianity, or just religion in general. Most religions claim that their God is perfect, for whoever that was. Now you know. Here's another one. Why do people struggle with panic, anxiety, and depression? Why is it that the ones that are so overwhelmed and commit suicide to stop their suffering, why are their families being told that their loved one is going to hell? They say, why is there such a double standard with everything? Why cancer? Why sickness? Now, I tend to agree with her. I believe there is absolutely a double standard. I'm not going to get into it because I will start ranting and this will never end. But these next couple of answers from different users, I agree with for the most part, and they help answer her question. So, they said, God is perfect, however we are not. We were given free will, and with that, we get to make our own choices. We must remember at all times that with every choice we make, there is a consequence. Another user said, he gave us free will and did not make us into robots to love him and obey him. Things happen because we want to do our thing. Now, believe it or not, this idea of free will in this context is actually relatively new within Christianity as a whole. For a long time, I mean, the Protestant Reformation is Calvinist. That's Reformed theology. They don't believe that our free will extends to that degree. I mean, some do. People who aren't all the way tulipped out, you know, they fall in between. But for the most part, Reformed theology teaches that everything is decreed by God, including things that are evil, that we just don't understand what the purpose is. It doesn't mean that a little girl getting murdered doesn't have a purpose as part of God's plan. This idea that we have free will and that we have this huge weight on our shoulders and that our actions carry consequences to an extreme degree, to the degree that if I don't reach out to Jim Bob Jones at the grocery store and tell them about Jesus, then maybe they won't ever hear about Jesus. And that's going to fall on me because of my choice not to do it. That type of free will that extends that far is relatively new. This is the way that I mostly lean. And I won't get into that because, again, I'll start talking forever. But free will to me seems apparent. And free will to me is the only way that we can reconcile this whole issue of, if God is perfect, why are little girls raped? Why did my mom just get hit by a car? Why, why this, why that? Why cancer? Why any of this stuff? Free will makes up for most of it. A little girl was raped because some pervert chose to rape her. I don't believe God was like, hey, pervert, I really need you to rape this little girl. It's a part of my plan. I got plans, and her rape is very important. It needs to happen. I don't buy into that. I can't justify that. If that's God, then I think he's disgusting. And it's not a God that I get on my knees for. So I don't agree with that. I tend to lean much further towards free will. I do have some issues with the whole open theist thing, but if I had to pick a side, I definitely lean that way. We are not pure, but God is. And God will test us along the way. If bad things happen and we blame God, we are only inviting the devil into our lives to corrupt our minds and hearts. What if God is to blame? Go back to Adam and Eve, okay? God created them perfect. He gave them free will. But because he's all-knowing and he's God, and we teach in church that he knows everything I'm going to do in my entire life before I was ever a thought in my parents' mind, okay? Adam and Eve, God made them perfect, gave them free will, set them up for failure. Because he knew before he ever even made them that they were going to turn and spit in his face. So, is that Satan's fault? If God pre-planned for them to fail, go to Satan and spit in God's face, is that God's fault? Christians love to blame Satan for anything that goes wrong. Anything. It's Satan's fault. Even if it's definitely your fault, bro. It's definitely your fault. You're going to blame Satan. Because God forbid you take accountability for your actions and them not turning out the way you thought they would. See, the whole blaming Satan thing just doesn't fly with me, man. And I know a lot of you are going to totally disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. It just doesn't sit right with me theologically. I can't do it. I can't do it. I think that I think free will extends to the degree that I spoke about earlier. I think free will matters a lot. I think your choices could be a matter of life or death for somebody, both literally and metaphysically. I think it goes that far. I never blamed Satan. When I went to prison, I didn't blame Satan for it. I didn't blame him for making me a criminal. I did that. Those were choices Joe made. No little devil was whispering in my ear. That was on me. Take accountability for your stuff. I think Satan plays a role in the world in general as a whole, and sometimes specifically, but I think the amount of times we blame Satan for stuff, I think it's 1% of that. I think we make choices, and I think Satan has to work very little to make us do it. Because by nature, we're wicked. And look that up in your Bible, because that's what it says. So these are real issues, and these are things that need to be talked about, and the things that are not talked about in church. Which is literally the only reason that I do this. This takes a lot of time. Way more time than you would think. When I was like, hey, I'm going to start doing YouTube because I'm really tired of typing a million pages to people on Instagram, I was like, oh, it's going to be super easy. You're just going to sit in front of a camera and talk, and then that's going to be it. No, it takes like hours and hours and hours by the time it's all done. So, those of you who have been here for a long time, those of you who helped me out on Patreon, I love you guys. Because honestly, I would not be able to do this otherwise because it does take a good chunk of time. But things are going to start getting real around here. I'm going to start talking about some stuff that the church would never talk about. Some things that are going to make some of you guys cringe, but we're going to talk about it. Because that's why most of you are here in the first place. So, I love you guys. Seriously. I have a blast talking to you guys on Instagram. I love it. I look forward to it. Next video is about, and this is going to be a rough one. The next video is about, is it okay for you and your spouse to roleplay in bed a rape scene? I was asked this question more than I mean, more than 5 times by different people over the past like 6 months. And I didn't want to put it on the topic list just because, I mean, for obvious reasons. But after the last one, I was told a really long story by a woman. And now I feel like I gotta do it. So, I've been doing research. I'm gonna continue doing research, and then I'm gonna do that video. That one's gonna be pretty crazy. So look out for that. I love you guys. I'll see you whenever I can get in front of a camera again.